Back at it today with another video, as today we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 first basemen. Real quick before we get started here, if you guys are new and enjoy this type of content, feel free to subscribe. It lets me know that you guys enjoy this type of content and it also helps out my channel quite a bit. But anyways, enough of me talking, let's get right into the rankings. Starting off at number 10, I have Ty France of the Seattle Mariners. France doesn't necessarily stand out at anything, but he's pretty good at everything. Last year, in 140 games, he hit .274 to go along with 20 home runs, 83 runs driven in, a .774 OPS, and a 3.1 WAR. In terms of defense, he's not great, but he's also not bad, as he had no defensive runs saved last season. Outside of Julio Rodriguez, this guy's probably the best hitter on the Mariners, and he's a big reason why they were so good last year. He's the type of player that really isn't known by many people across baseball, but he's a really good player, and I have him coming in at number 10. Moving on, at number 9, I have Rhys Hoskins of the Philadelphia Phillies. Hoskins is the type of player that has 40 home run pop, but he also still strikes out quite a bit. Last year, in 156 games, he hit .246 to go along with 30 home runs, 79 runs driven in, a .794 OPS, and a 2.9 WAR. In terms of defense, he's not necessarily great, he's not a gold glover, but he is definitely solid as he had 3 defensive runs saved on the year. If you're like me and you watch a lot of baseball, especially in the postseason, you will understand how important Rhys Hoskins is to this Philadelphia Philly team. He came up huge for them last year in the postseason, and really throughout his career, he's been one of the best power-hitting first basemen in the game. I'm a big fan of Hoskins. He's really just entering his prime at this point, so it's pretty safe to say we have yet to see the best of Hoskins, and I have him coming in at number 9. Moving on to the number 8 spot, I have Nathaniel Lowe of the Texas Rangers. Lowe is easily one of the most underrated players in the game today. Last year, in 157 games, he hit .302 to go along with 27 home runs, 76 runs driven in, an .851 OPS, and a 3.3 WAR. During the second half of last season, Lowe was arguably the hottest hitter in all of baseball. He was going off and it seemed like no pitchers could get him out. But as good as he was offensively last year, he struggled defensively as he had -9 defensive runs saved. But even with the poor defense last year, he was still one of the most valuable players on the Rangers. And going forward, I have reason to believe that Lowe's going to improve defensively. I mean, he really can't get much worse if we're being honest, but with how good he is and was offensively last year, there's really no reason to worry about the defense. Lowe is not known by many baseball fans across the league, but in my opinion, he is most definitely a top 10 first baseman. Moving on, at number 7, I have Christian Walker of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Walker is similar to Nathaniel Lowe in the sense that he's one of the most underrated players in baseball. Last year, Walker played in all but 2 games where he hit .242 to go along with 36 home runs, 94 runs driven in, an .804 OPS, and a 5.1 WAR. And on top of the game-changing power this guy possesses, he's also one of the best defensive first basemen in baseball. He had 17 defensive runs saved on the year last season, and he also won the Gold Glove Award at first base. And based off of those numbers I just listed off, you're probably thinking Walker should be in the top 5 at worst, and I agree with you, but we're not just looking at 2022 numbers. I just need to see Walker do it for a little bit longer before I move him into that top 5. But if he plays anywhere as close to as good as he did last year, he is definitely going to move up the list. Moving on, at number 6, I have Jose Abreu of the Houston Astros. For Abreu's lofty standards, he had a down season last year. In 157 games, he hit .304 to go along with 15 home runs, 75 runs driven in, an .824 OPS, and a 4.2 WAR. So the fact that those numbers are bad for Abreu's standards goes to show just how good he's been throughout his career. Now, in terms of defense, at this point in his career, he's definitely not great. He had 1 defensive run saved last year, so he's not a liability over there, but like I said, he's not great. But going from a lineup like the White Sox, who struggled mightily last year, to arguably one of the best offenses in baseball in the Houston Astros, I think his numbers all around are going to improve. I think Abreu is going to come out hot next season and remind a lot of people just how good he still is. Getting into the top 5, at number 5, I have Matt Olson of the Atlanta Braves. Olson is easily all around one of the best first basemen in baseball. He has a ton of power to go along with Gold Glove defense at first base. Looking at last season, he played in all 162 games where he hit .240 to go along with 34 home runs, 103 runs driven in, an .802 OPS, and a 3.3 WAR. To go along with the dominant offensive numbers, he also had 6 defensive runs saved. This guy is so underrated, and I think really it's been because he played in Oakland early on in his career, but now that he's in Atlanta, I think he's getting the love and respect he deserves. He's as consistent and as good as you're going to find over at first base, and I have him coming in at number 5. Moving on, at number 4, I have Pete Alonso of the New York Mets. Alonso last year put up some ridiculous offensive numbers. In 160 games, he hit 271 to go along with 40 home runs, a league best 131 runs driven in, an 869 OPS, and a 4.4 WAR. Now in terms of defense, he wasn't great as he had -2 defensive runs saved, but with how good he was offensively last year, who really cares about the defense? I mean, 40 home runs and 130 plus runs driven in, that is just dominant. And the fact that he put up some similar numbers in his rookie season goes to show that he's the type of player that can do this year in and year out. Alonso is so good and such an exciting player to watch, and I have him coming in at number 4. Getting into the top 3, at number 3 I have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. of the Toronto Blue Jays. Vlad had a down season last year, but when he's at his best, he's one of the best. In 160 games, he hit 274 to go along with 32 home runs, 97 runs driven in, 8 stolen bases, an 818 OPS, and a 3.9 WAR. So yeah, offensively it really wasn't a bad season for Guerrero, but for his lofty standards, you could consider it a down year. But he made up for his quote-unquote lack of production offensively with some solid defense. He had 3 defensive runs saved on the year, which was good enough to win him his first career Gold Glove award. So if he's playing Gold Glove defense over at first base and he gets back to the 48 home run production he put up in 2021, he's going to win one, if not multiple MVP awards. Guerrero is all around one of the best players in baseball today, and I have him coming in at number 3. Getting on to number 2, I have Freddie Freeman of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Freeman has consistently been great throughout his career, and last year was no different as he played in 159 games where he hit 325 to go along with 21 home runs, 100 runs driven in, 13 stolen bases, a 918 OPS, and a 5.9 WAR. Now defensively, he wasn't great as he had -2 defensive runs saved, but he's been much better throughout his career over at first base, and I fully expect him to improve going forward. But even as Freeman ages and gets to his mid-30s, he's still one of the best offensive players in the game. And being in that stacked LA lineup really does help. He sits in the middle of it, and going forward, I think he's going to produce offensively and put up gaudy offensive numbers. So all around, Freeman is one of the best players, let alone first baseman in the league, and I have him coming in at number 2. And moving on, at number 1, the best first baseman in baseball today, it has to be Paul Goldschmidt. This past season, Goldschmidt finally won the notorious MVP award that I think he should have won a long time ago. He played in 151 games where he hit 317 to go along with 35 home runs, 115 runs driven in, a 981 OPS, and a 7.8 WAR. He's also been a pretty solid defender over at first base throughout his career, and last year was no different as he had 2 defensive runs saved. It was all around an amazing season for Goldschmidt, and it's really what he's been doing for a very long time. And similar to Freddie Freeman, Goldschmidt is getting into his mid-30s at this point, and he seems to just get better with age. So going forward, I think there's reason to believe that Goldschmidt can put up similar offensive numbers and potentially even win yet another MVP award. Goldschmidt is just a stud over there at first base. He's a player who's easy to root for, and I have him coming in at number 1. Alright, so there you have my top 10 first basemen in baseball today. Let me know what you guys think down below. And as always, I want to thank you guys again so much for watching and continuing to support, and I'll see you next time.